So this is a look at fractal dynamics from initially an individual perspective and then into an inter-individual perspective. So something I haven't really addressed very deeply is, I have talked quite deeply about individual development, but I haven't really looked at it too deeply from, the chakra perspective. And I'm scared of using the chakra perspective because it's kind of narcissistically oriented. It's really focused on the individual. And but I do think when you do a lot of individual introspection on your physiological body, these sorts of intelligences do show themselves. So I think there is a reality to this, even though it is kind of an egocentric reality. But if it is a perspective of a broader fractal that will emerge itself, it will show itself in intersubjective spaces, then it's kind of interesting to point to it first and then show its relationship to a broader intersubjective reality after. So, roughly, the chakras, as you probably know, go from your root to your stomach, to your solar plexus, to your heart, to your throat, to your head, and then there's one on the top of your head. I tend to leave the seventh one out for reasons of complexity that I can't fully take into account. So I tend to just do the first six. When you look at, development, babies start really from physiological orientation. They're primarily focused on their body, where they end, where the world begins. That physiological body is the primary focus. And then when that kind of gets left behind, it moves into emotions. You're never really leaving behind your body, but your primary focus shifts to emotionality. And then, sadness, happiness, that's your world. And then you move primarily to intellectualization, objectification and so forth. And then that becomes your world. And so it moves, from the first two, which is the physiological body, the first two chakras, to the second two, which is kind of emotionality, to the third two, which is kind of intellectualization. And, this repeats. Even in spiral dynamics, the first two systems, which are yellow and turquoise, tend to be what Wilber calls centauric, which are physiologically oriented. You're reintegrating your body. And interestingly, the second tier seems to be all about integration, so you don't leave behind your emotional and your mental apparatus, but your primary focus becomes your physiological orientation within the context of all these other developmental levels. And so you're reintegrating your physiological body in many ways. So I'm saying this happens over and over again, and what spiral dynamics calls the second tier, I call the sixth. This has happened from matter to vital life to power orientation, I subjectivity, reptiles, to intersubjectivity, mammals, to humans, objectivity, to interobjectivity, which is the second tier. But in a bigger perspective, we are primarily focused on individuality. So in a even greater fractal orientation, this whole reality is focused on individuality, subjectivity. You are on this side of your body. Although you do, again, always, you're in a shared space. But the shared space is not the primary orientation. Your own body-mind is your primary orientation. But with technology, I think we're going to move into an inter-individuality far more than we have. So maybe, very soon, we will have individuality, intersubjectivity as our primary focus with nanotechnology, AI, telepathy. We're going to be able to create a dreamlike experience, a shared space that is dreamlike. And, nanotechnology will be able to miraculously, essentially, create matter in ways that we share telepathically, a shared, meaning space, but in a physiological sense. So interindividuality, this fractal is going to push into an inter-individual space where it's primarily be focused on the individual, although it is always at these other levels because it's a fractal. But its primary focus has arguably been on the subjective space. And so heaven is coming in that sense. Heaven will be created, so long as we live up to it, as long as we allow this fractal to unfold in its complexification in a healthy way, where we look to shared meaning, we look to the shared space, and we try to create this, more utopic reality together, where this will arguably include all animals. Animals will arguably be able to be augmented, but we have to be careful with our technology because initially it's not going to be necessarily decentralized. There's going to be people on the top that are trying to manipulate this technology for their own intents and purposes. So we have to make sure that we do really make it a shared space, and so this fractal can really unfold in a holistic, comprehensive, integrative, collective way that still maintains individual freedom, but is transcendent of it in this intersubjective space. Which is, again, always already present. Even matter seems to have heaven in it. Even matter has intersubjectivity in what I'm saying. But its primary focus is the root. Its primary focus is on, materiality. Vital life includes more of that second, that what our stomach is like. It eats things. It takes in sunlight. It's digestive, and so, but it has within it heaven. It has within it higher fractals, but its primary focus is the lower. And so, what we're doing is we're moving into a primary focus of interindividuality, in my opinion. Okay, be well.